Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's edition of Shop Talk, hosted by the Triangle Area SQL Server User Group. So we have with us tonight, over directly to my right, your left, everybody, Mala Mahadevan. How you doing, Mala?
Good evening, everyone.
And we have to the southeast, which, if you circumnavigate the globe, will actually be someone's northwest. Mike Christensen. How you doing, Mike?
Hello, everybody.
All right. So we have said our hellos. Now it's time to talk about what we do here at Shop Talk. Mostly, we ramble. Sometimes we rant. Occasionally, we talk about an interesting topic. That's the gist of Shop Talk. So drop your interesting topics in chat, and otherwise, we'll just ramble and dissemble. There's a little bit of dissembling. I will not put that past us. This does look like a fairly dissembling crew. So we have a couple of, I don't know, I guess stories. I'll call them stories. And I'm going to share my first one. This one comes from Mala. It is, here we go, Redgate, their State of the Database Landscape Survey. They put together a survey a little while back, had just over 3,800, just under 3,900 respondents across 6 continents, which means, yet again, people are not taking into account the important Antarctic database administrators. I'm just very upset by this. I'm already a bit verklempt. But we're going to soldier on in the spirit, in the honor of those brave Antarctic DBAs. All of the penguins. Not the South American penguins, though, just the Antarctic ones. All right. General idea of the survey. Every year, Redgate asks a whole bunch of questions. They get a lot of information about what's going on in the broader space. They try to have a fairly, what do I call it, broad swath of the population in terms of not just SQL Server people, but also working with MySQL, working with Postgres, working with et cetera, et cetera. There is a SQL DBA there. I don't doubt that at all. I imagine that there probably are a few database administrators. Probably just a few, not many more than that. But, you figure you've got permanent research stations, and there's Antarctica and Antarctica. It's a big continent. It doesn't look like it on a map, but it's a big continent. Because northern parts of Antarctica, I mean, it's southern South America. You're essentially Chile or Argentina. So, anywho, geography lessons aside, number of database platforms per organization. And what Redgate points out here is over the past few years, going back 2020, about a third of, maybe 40% of organizations only had one data platform technology. And already at that point, 62% had more than one. I shouldn't say already at that point. My assumption would be this number has been somewhere in this range for a while. Even going back, 10, 15, 20 years, you probably have multiple data platform technologies. And we also have multiple Mike Christensens. Welcome in, alternate universe Mike.
Sorry, I went to Twitch at the same time, and then I got feedback, and then I didn't want to ruin the podcast or the video cast.
That's okay. Yeah, YouTube considers this a podcast, so we've got that going for us.
This is the yearly thing where I realize I'm underpaid.
Well, I will send you 20% of all of the money I make from YouTube, which is $0, and I'll make sure that you get 20% of that.
I watch a lot of your videos, which is crazy.
Yep. No, we're not monetized. Technically, I could turn on monetization, but I feel bad about the audience because you'd watch a bunch of ads. I would get like 12 cents over the course of a year, and then I'd have to give 2 of those cents to Mike because 20% cut.
Because I watch them all, yeah.
So yeah, I don't think it'd be worth it. All right. Point here being, we see this decrease in terms of sole data platform technology as more people migrate away from using Fox Pro as their only database technology.
Fox Pro.
I just slid that one in there. Wanted to see how long it take for people to catch. And Challenges organizations face. So things like we need better skills. We need better team training, data integration complexities, monitoring, troubleshooting, system complexity, compatibility issues. I would say these make a lot of sense. If you pay him in Bitcoin, he might be rich. Maybe. Maybe. Ways.
I'm rich with friends and colleagues, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, the wealth is the friends you make along the way, because then you can sleep on their couches, and then you don't have to pay rent. So basically, you're making money right there. Top 5 ways multiple database technologies affect organizations' data management processes. I am going to call out Redgate for using the correct form of affect here instead of incorrectly using effect. So good on Redgate there. That is a common mistake. And I bagged them on their utter lack of respect for the Antarctic database population, but I got to give them credit here. Things are more complex. I would agree with that. When you have more technologies around, yeah, there's additional complexity. Skill diversification, yeah, even if it's 2 relational database platforms, unless you're talking about something like SQLite where there's effectively no administration, then you're going to have some additional requirements. You at least need to learn, how do I take these backups? How do I restore these? How do I maintain systems, ensure that they're still running? How do I track like performance tune and understand what queries are hitting the machines and figure out why everything falls apart at 9 a.m. every day?
It's a big deal. Yeah, so you guys have heard it and probably are sick of it, but like we're knee deep in the Oracle to SQL Server conversion, and like it's a big deal. Like, you know, split ag and string ag and the performance differences between 2char versus date part, they're a big deal. Like we're working through all that stuff. It's not trivial.
Yeah, yeah. But it apparently does provide improved flexibility according to 591 people. And
what exactly do they mean by improved flexibility? I wonder.
I think in this case, it's less of, well, if you have 2 relational database technologies, and more of, well, if you have, say, SQL Server and Apache Kafka or Spark or MongoDB or something like that, where you're solving different types of problems, that you have more flexibility in terms of how I can store, process, and manage this data and solve customer problems more effectively. I suppose that's what I would go with.
Okay. Because if I would think having a lot of a blend of technologies beyond a certain point, it actually creates less flexibility, not improved flexibility. That's what I was thinking. It's just that everywhere you go, you're limited by something, some third party tool or some, something one tool, one side of the platform can do, another one cannot. So I was a little confused on what they meant there.
Mala, you just made my day because we have had this discussion internally. So we have Airflow, and we also have SSIS, and we have IWS, which is a legacy product. And so we have 3 products, and like some of us use IWS because we're infrequent schedulers. We're not full-time ETL developers. Some of our ETL developers have Airflow, which is kind of free-ish, but has high complexity. And then we have SSIS, but that's really only Microsoft. So Mullen, when you said that, like I lit up because I'm like, the complexity that we've created has been intense, and it hasn't been awesome.
Yep, that's the top line here, and then also data migration challenges. Hey, just like what Mike talked about, even data security complexities, where you have to realize that securing data in SQL Server is different from securing data in Oracle versus Postgres versus MySQL versus MongoDB. MongoDB secures its data really well because it doesn't actually keep the data. It just drops it arbitrarily. So you don't have to worry about losing that. Nobody else gets it either.
Well, that's good. That could have saved my career when I was younger. I wrote drop table, and I got 77 calls in a row. So um, thanks, MongoDB, for not saving my career when I was younger.
Ah, yeah. Well, you know what? If you're a DBA and you've never had that experience, then you haven't tried hard enough.
Who's Mike Christensen, and why is he dropping tables? That was a bad day. It was a bad day.
I believe it. I believe it.
You
Why
also
is
shouldn't. You also shouldn't have 7 people have admin access to the database.
Oh, say that again. Oh, for sure.
Shouldn't have 7 people that don't know what they're doing have admin access to the database. Thank you. I'll say it again.
Thank you for attending Mike's TED Talk. The good thing is, Anders says, all our data is public at this point, so data security is dead. And you have to say it exactly like that. So you've got to do the everything is fine. I wish I could disagree with you. I want to disagree with you on sake of principle. I really, really want to, but yeah, it's all out there.
There's already AI Kevin's like all over YouTube.
I hope not. One of me is sufficient. 2 of me, well, let's just say we've watched Highlander. Okay. 7, I had 45 devs with SA rights at one place. And I'm sure they were unhappy when you came in and they all lost SA rights one day. And you're like, oh.
Did he say 7? Did he say 7 and then the second word was 7?
No. Andrew says 7 because he was talking about your 7 people. I had 45. He's one-upping you, basically. He's being topper.
Oof.
Yeah, 45 people. I'm sure the administrative assistant had SA rights as well. I've seen places like that where literally everybody has SA rights.
Well, all right. So I know this is a sidebar and it's 6:12 and you have a lot of topics. So I'll just say coming from the accounting world, I have access rights to the database that I never use unless it's view only. The only time I ever use them is view only. So I can double in SQL Server. It's a little bit for me, and this is an Oracle to the SQL Server thing. When I look at people's rights and what their privileges are and their roles are, it's a little bit harder for me. So I log into an admin account and I don't do anything. I never do anything. And then I had this thought, I have those rights and I could send it to my boss, but there's a reason why bosses don't have those rights, right? And I'm not saying my boss is not unethical. She's amazing. She's not unethical, but when I was doing my accounting training, that's stuff in the channel. And there's a reason why upper level people should not have rights. So anyway, it's just a good reminder that not everybody up and down the ladder should have access to stuff.
Yep, that's absolutely a good point.
That's 100%. Yeah. I've worked at enough places where people get access because they happen to be managers or above and they've done incredibly stupid stuff.
Right.
Sure.
Negligence or nefariousness. Most of the time it's not nefariousness, but some people are that way, but you want to protect against that.
Yep.
Sorry, I derailed this, but
it's okay.
I had auditing tangent mind going.
Although that's probably the first time in Shop Talk history that anybody has ever derailed us. We have always been laser focused on our topics for 4 years now. So, Mike, you've broken.
Since 2018. Yeah.
2020. We started in April of 2020, I believe it was.
All right. 2018 was when I first started coming.
Yeah.
2020 was.
That's when we started Shop Talk. All right. In addition to talking data platform technologies, Redgate survey also focuses on DevOps, considering that Redgate spends a lot of time and money and effort on DevOps tooling. So it makes sense that they would ask about this as well. They were asking, hey, why you know DevOps? And reason, we know no DevOps. Followed by, your DevOps is messing up our business plan. Followed by, we know no DevOps again. followed by our dev and our ops people are no longer on speaking terms after the incident of 09. Followed by why you DevOps and begin with. Followed by we have no money for DevOpsing. Followed by our leadership is too busy trying to update the accounting database because, unlike Mike's company, we have not yet removed their permissions. So that's a lot of reasons. It's a lot of reasons for why there are no DevOpsing.
That's only the top 7.
Yeah. I'm glad there weren't 8.
The other ones are non-concatenated.
Issues with standardization. Apparently, not as many people had issues with overcoming different approaches to application and database development. So this is, what is the challenge of bringing databases into DevOps? And basically, they're saying here different approaches to app and database development. Essentially, I guess database development, we just YOLO it. You just start throwing stuff out, hope that works. Because different points here, synchronizing application and database changes is a challenge, which it can be. Preserving and protecting business critical data, yeah. Meeting security or compliance concerns, keeping up with the speed of delivery of applications. Not many people have that problem. Only 5%. So I would say, I guess maybe it fits in with this first one, but my biggest challenge that I find with companies trying to do, let's call it roughly CI/CD for databases, and that'll be a little bit more specific than what's that?
See, continuous delivery, is that what you mean?
Yes. Oh, so you know what? Since Mike is
my role is like the perpetual beginner, CCID pipelines, right?
Actually, that is a really good question, because I'm gonna drop in a link to this Atlassian blog post,
Awesome.
explaining continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment. They are 3 different things. Continuous integration is essentially, I can check in my code into source control and it will run tests. It will ensure that everything builds. It will ensure that we have some base level of correctness every time I check in code. I'm constantly running integration tests when I check in code. That's an idea. Continuous delivery, continuous deployment, these are slightly different. With continuous delivery, you have automated testing plus an automated release process. So you can deploy your application by clicking a button. Continuous deployment. So again, this part right here, click a button. Basically, there's a human who is saying, okay, I'm ready for us to push. Boom. You have George Jetson here pushing that button over and over until his button pushing finger hurts. With continuous deployment, you have code, as soon as it passes all of those tests, it passes automatically through gates and then pushes out. Meaning that you do not need a human George Jetsoning in the loop to perform a deployment. What you need is enough solid tests and a process that can consistently deploy out code without needing people to babysit or handhold it. So that's the difference. And that's why there are 2 separate CDs. And it is kind of important to get that clarity, except I think a lot of people don't know the difference between these 2 and confuse them very easily. So continuous delivery is the intermediate step. Continuous deployment is your ideal end state where code is checked in and it's pushing. And this could push to
prod.
Yeah, different environments. So you could push it to different environments and have different styles of gating and checks, where maybe you deployed a test server and then it executes a whole series of larger tests, and then you automate the deployment to production immediately after that. Or you have your CI/CD process, your continuous deployment will automatically push into the test environment, and then you have humans testing it, And when it's time for pushing into the production environment, then you may have another pull request that goes through, does another build, does another deployment. So there are a few techniques specifically for performing this action. Yeah, James Earl Jones passed away. It was very unfortunate.
Oh, really?
Yep.
When?
Really, is that
today, I think. Yeah. He was 93.
Okay.
Well,
Breaking news on Shop Talk.
So.
Oh my, I had no idea. Thank you.
Speaking of breaking news, is CrowdStrike watching this right now, you think? In terms of...
No. No, they have better things to do.
Oh, do they? I think that they would really benefit from continuous delivery.
Having a person push the button instead of automatically deploying. They may also benefit.
I'm going to tell you that after fixing 37 computers in an emergency fashion, and I'm not really qualified to be a desktop support person, but that's what I was doing on Sunday, walking around empty halls, fixing 37 computers. But I will say, I narked. Oh, this is bad. I shouldn't say this. Okay, narked is a bad word.
Shop Talk first. We're narking people.
So I was walking through, we'll just say it rhymes with Cancer Center. And there are, let's just say, cubby holes where the doctors all do their work. And a lot of the keyboards were broken. And then they had numlock, they had like keys that they ripped off and put onto other areas. Right. And so I'm trying to do my like syslog, like I'm trying to do my commands to fix the computer. We can. And it's the emergency crisis and we're all helping out. And people had ripped off different keys and put them onto other keys. And I was like, well, how am I going to do my job if insert is numlock? So I found like maybe 20 computers that were all just butchered. And I think that they're just so busy they don't call the support desk. So anyway, I'm just saying this is a positive note because I put it in a ticket and I said, hey, listen, I'm not trying to bust anybody's chops, but this unit that I was working on had like 20 like keyboards that are just totally broken. And like, I'm sure that they don't put in a ticket. It's not anybody's fault. And I got a really awesome response. They said like, we fixed it. I was like, yes.
They fixed it by taking the keyboards and shuffling them around. So now they're in different spots.
Yeah, where insert won't kill someone, and like in brain cancer.
All right. So Anders was talking about where CD may not be great. Clustered indexes on multi-terabyte tables. Look, if you build that online equals on, you've got Enterprise Edition, and you've got enough disk space, go for it, buddy. So yeah, that's. By the way, let me drop the link to the State of the Database Landscape article from Redgate. But that is the difference between continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous deployment. And if we're talking about continuous integration and either delivery or deployment, there is a challenge here in terms of working with database code and working with the fact that data is state, and trying to store state and source control is difficult. So I can see that difficulty. And also, I think there is a bit of a mindset that, oh, well, I can make changes directly on the database. And it doesn't help that in a lot of cases, there are legitimate reasons why we have to make the change there. I can't replicate this performance issue in an environment where you've got 25 rows or where the shape of the data is drastically different. I may not be able to replicate exactly that issue, and I might be able to sort it out without, from first principles, sort it out a priori, but at the same time, I might need to experiment, and that does bring up a challenge. I know that there are things like clone database. I know that there are capabilities that more mature companies can do around, well, let's restore a database from prod onto a test server, or not necessarily a test server for data confidentiality reasons, but an additional server in the production environment that perhaps you will grant additional access to for these purposes, and allow for additional troubleshooting work. But that's a level of maturity at a company. And if you don't have that level of maturity, it can be easier just to, well, I'll make the index change here in production, and we'll see how that query works. Great, the query is working fine. Or I made the index change, but it turns out that wasn't the whole problem, or maybe it was part of the problem, or that issue was a red herring. It was actually a different cause, which I've run into in some complicated queries where I would have said, this looks like the problem, and put out the index, and it turns out, oh, that's actually not the problem. That there's actually something else going on in addition. That either this thing was masking, or that was the actual cause of most of the pain, but the execution plan made it look like this other issue was the problem. So I can see workflow differences, and you wouldn't do that in dev. You wouldn't try to start editing source code files in dev or in prod directly. So there is a workflow difference. There can be challenges in trying to organize a proper solution. Now, granted, none of this is insurmountable. You can absolutely still have source code of your database code, of your tables, your views, your stored procedures, everything else, user-defined table types, and all of that fun stuff. You absolutely can. You can track those index changes in source control. You can script out deployment and ensure that those are in sync. Even if sometimes you need to do the thing in production, you can go back and fix it. It's I guess building muscle memory around doing this, around and explaining the importance of keeping that code in source control, of why it is valuable to have your database code in source control. Mm-hmm. Which there's a class of typically older database administrator who's been doing this for a while and says, why does it matter? I don't need this. I have the code out here in the production database, or I have a backup that I can get to. And technically it's accurate, but how long does it take? Source control sucks? Not really. I mean, you can make an argument that source control has challenges for databases because databases include state. But yeah, your old DBA.
So
I mean,
if you want to search something, or you want to verify if an object is used and things like that, where would people be going back to backups for that, Kevin?
Well, for a lot of that stuff, I mean, I would look at DMVs of system references, and you get into a challenge of
no, but yeah.
Oh, there's a big challenge in terms of how do I actually understand if a particular object is in use? Because you can look at the plan cache, you can look at query cache, you can look at referencing entities, the DMV for that. You can look at if you've got integration services, SSIS DB. You can look at SQL agent jobs and reporting services reports, and then you have to go look at application code and if it makes direct calls. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer for even that kind of a question. And Mike is holding up a page.
So this is apropos to a conversation we had before the stream. Kevin has an amazing review of Grant Pitchy's book on performance tuning, and so I'm not as far as him because he obviously read the entire book. But Grant does a really good job of like summarizing, like, if you have performance issues,
So the issues
I fall into these 6 categories.
DMV-based searches is that first of all, it's hard to find who changed what was the latest version of something you're looking, and what you get is always like it's a text-based search result, more or less.
And it might be a user account, right? It might
Right.
be a sys login that's not a person.
Yeah, yeah. And so that is something that source control can definitely help with, is who's making the change, because
Uh-huh.
you have git blame.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, I am not. Yeah, there's a command in Git called blame that looks at, for each line of code, who is the last person to modify it.
Uh-huh.
I feel like security is after me. Hold on.
All
Right
right,
when you said,
another shop.
blame, I
Yeah,
was
Git
like, oh
Git
crap.
blame, and another shop talk first. Mike is being arrested by his corporate security for sassing CrowdStrike. It turns out they were listening the whole time. So Anders does say the scream test works, where you drop an object, and if anybody screams about it, then you know that's important. But then you need to get it back. So how do you get it back?
You call Mike Christensen and yell at him.
That makes sense.
Well,
Cloud migrations. Actually, I love this. Isn't always cost effective. I mean, always is carrying a lot of effort. SP rename object. Yeah, but that's the weak way. I mean, that's the way if you're afraid. You got to just uh, find that intestinal fortitude and learn to love the bomb.
did you just say intestinal fortitude?
I did.
Yeah, I've heard of fortitude.
I love that.
I'm just clarifying. Can I? All right. So it's 6:31. I don't want to interrupt, but I did want to say that when we were talking earlier, that shoot, now I lost my train of thought. All right, go to cloud
Another
migration.
shop talk first. We've lost our train of thought. The train derailment episode.
My fault. All right. Cloud migration isn't always cost effective. Go ahead.
And I agree with Anders. Cloud migration is rarely cost effective. That we might go a little bit more than rarely, but if you're talking about a significant on-premises environment, yeah, you're typically not saving money in a cloud. And factors driving reduced cloud usage or moving back on premises: cost, security, client or vendor requirements. So cost is the biggest factor in terms of why you know cloud. Security plays a big role in why I know cloud. And client or vendor requirements. Sometimes you can't. 88% are using the cloud, but using the cloud can be anything from, we've got Microsoft 365 E3 licensing for our employees, to we're running everything in a cloud environment.
Wait a minute though. Wait a minute. This is like database people though.
Yes. But if your company is using Microsoft 365 E3 licensing and you're getting Excel online, technically you're using the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but so I'm thinking about Padma. So one of our big DBAs is Padma. She wouldn't. I mean, she works at Duke. She wouldn't pick that. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I'm nitpicking, but I'm saying that
right. Or, well, let me pick another thing. Salesforce. Oh, we're using Salesforce and we get Salesforce data. You're using the cloud. Now, is your SQL Server in the cloud? No.
Yeah.
But your Salesforce data is, so technically, yeah, you're using it. I mean, using the cloud is a huge difference between that and relying on, or solely using, or primarily using, which,
all right.
Let's drill into Cloud Insights. Let's see. There, by the way, each one of these has whole sections, and we get to where production databases are hosted. And actually, this kind of talks to the point. Then again, Andrew says, I grabbed an extra 200 cores this morning, which means that nobody else gets cores in the region. Thanks, Anders.
200 cores? Anders, stop hoarding. I mean, you're supposed to be Norwegian, share.
All right. Another first in Shop Talk history: slandering Scandinavians. We have never done that in Shop Talk history.
I'm sorry, my last name is Christensen with all E's.
I thought it was Christensen. You're changing it on me now.
That's what you. No, it's all E's. You say it well because we've Americanized it. But I am half French Canadian and half from Denmark. So Anders, I can razz Anders unashamedly.
I mean, so can I. I just don't care about it. Only need them for 48 hours, then we'll give them back. Okay, all right. So, where production databases are hosted, we do see some increase in all cloud, and I do think for smaller companies, for newer companies, all cloud makes a lot of sense. So mostly cloud, 18%. This is a significant increase where there's a lot of mostly cloud. Mixture has been steady. Mostly on-prem has slowly declined, and all on-prem has actually made a pretty big drop. And
really?
Solomon talking about unused objects. It can be extremely difficult. DMBs will not help with infrequent code paths. Object names can be generated in dynamic SQL or passed from the app. What sources connect to the database that can submit queries, and a custom Microsoft Access tool that nobody outside of support had ever known about. Yeah, object names might not even be in source control. You're absolutely right, and that was getting to the point that I had mentioned where, yeah, this is a major challenge, and I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer because you do have to look at every possible path within your organization to where you can get execution of code, and that's an incredible challenge. Now, if you have everything in source control, if you have everything searchable, if you know that you're using these technologies, that, hey, we've got Airflow, we've got SQL Server integration services, we have reporting services, we have Power BI, we have these other things, it makes it less risky. But yeah, there's still a chance that something could slip through, that there's some old application somewhere that still uses it, or that there's a linked server connection where it won't show up in the referencing entity's DMV because it's cross-server.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
Yeah, can be a challenge.
Well, this is super interesting because it's kind of like, all right, let's just say as an example, like Duke Health is a big institution and we had millions of patients. We're working with the cloud and we have some agreements with Microsoft. So like, what if we're like, let's just say 5 years from now, well, we're going to go back to on-prem. Like, what do we do, right? Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal. It's possible. Companies are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Have
you seen people go back to on-prem, Kevin?
I have not directly worked with a company going back to on-prem. I have talked to people whose companies have gone back on-prem, and that a lot of the time the reason is it was a lot more expensive than what they thought it would be.
Yeah.
Right.
Or that performance was not sufficient given the amount of money they were willing to pay.
Right.
There's some if you Google there's some hacker news stories of people going back.
Yeah.
They're pretty good.
Anders has a logon trigger that rolls back connections coming in from Access. That seems smart. I have no problem with that. All right, forms of cloud infrastructure currently used. Plus, there's this, I kind of consider this a little bit of a cop-out of a private cloud. Private cloud can mean a company like Rackspace, but private cloud could also be like you're working for a state agency and, we have a private cloud because the entire state uses a single data center, which technically is a private cloud. But, at the same time, like I would also call that you're effectively working on premises. You just don't have servers in a closet. Public cloud, this would be your AWS, your Amazon, I said AWS already, Azure, or Alibaba. multiple public clouds, Alibaba and Temu Cloud, hybrid cloud, where I guess you've got a server that, I don't know, it's fluffy. You have a very fluffy server, and other. That might be like GovCloud or something. Core issue might be lack of skills. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, I have a website that's not Git, it's something else. Anyway, I'll have to come back to it. I'm looking for my link. Anyway, in theory, Mike Christensen, who is from Denmark, Anders, has a website that is not Git, but it's something else. And I'll tell you in a moment.
All right. While Mike is looking that up, platform as a service versus infrastructure as a service. And this is an area where you can potentially save a bit of money, is going heavily in terms of PaaS. Now, this is mostly PaaS. Fortunately, first of all, donut chart, really, Redgate, you got to donut chart us. Second of all, what the heck? What the heck? Now, the fact that I can mouse over this and see what each one means, okay, but still, come on, man. Mostly platform as a service, 18%. Mostly, majority versus mostly. What? I don't like this. I do. It's like 5 issues with this chart. We've hit issue number 5 with this chart. Plus, a sixth of people have no idea. We're clouding it up, but I have no idea what we're doing. Okay, I'm moving on. This chart has angried up the blood. Primary reasons for using a cloud: scalability and flexibility. That's fair. High availability and reliability, unless you're in South Central U.S. region. Cost efficiency. Ease of management. That's fair. Data backup and disaster recovery. If you pay enough money, yeah. Data security and compliance. Yeah. Global accessibility. I can buy that. So most of these reasons, I think they are legitimate reasons for why you might want to use a cloud technology versus staying on premises. Old data center caught fire. I guess that would be disaster recovery. Number one reason, Opex versus capex. My good man, you are... I need to pull up a presentation of mine. Because...
Galaxy Services.
Yep, Galaxy Services. Let me pull
Oh, I said
up.
it wrong.
It's okay. It's okay, Mike Christensen.
I am from the north/Denmark.
Let's see. Saving your wallet from the cloud. I thought how they changed how you could write off cloud stuff. Yeah. What I'm going to do, first of all, I got a talk. I have a talk called Saving Your Wallet from the Cloud. And inside of that talk, I'm going to go to a particular slide, but I need to get to the slide. So there we go. Now, it's going to look a little weird.
This is a premium. Y'all, this is a premium. Like, you normally have to pay for this.
That's right. Normally, you have to finance this. So, Opex versus capex. My wife, who is downstairs, is the MBA in the family. She is the accountant. Nonetheless, I'm the one talking about this. Yes, I have an entire slide on Opex versus capex in cloud technologies and what each of those means. And I am now going to subject you to it. In a shop talk first, I am subjecting you to Opex versus capex discussions.
That's right. EBITDA is something I have worked on for a long time.
Yep, EBITDA. All right. Very briefly, I won't read the whole thing to you. It's okay. But CapEx's purpose is I'm buying fixed assets. I want to buy a plant. I want to buy a piece of expensive equipment. I want to buy a combine. I want to buy a thresher. I want to buy copy machines. I want to buy 55 computers for my IT staff. I'm buying this.
100 A100 GPUs.
Something like that. Yeah, that would definitely be something I'd want to capitalize. And the reason we capitalize is taxes. We take the tax burden of the purchase, and instead of paying all of the tax burden in year one, we effectively get to amortize the cost of the equipment over the lifespan of the equipment. So if this is A100 GPUs that we expect to replace in 5 years, we can amortize the cost of those GPUs over a 5-year period. And in each year, we get to take some percentage of the write-off of this purchase on our taxes. And what that does is that it allows the finance people who are doing all of your tax preparation, it allows them to smooth out the expenses, that the amount of money they're paying to the government every quarter, so that the company doesn't have a $10 million tax bill in one quarter and then a $1 million tax bill in the second quarter and then $8 million, and like fluctuating, bumping around a lot. Companies don't like that. So they like to have as smooth of a process as they can, where they can prep ahead and know, okay, over the next 12 months, this is our estimated tax bill. So we use capital expenditures, and we get to draw down a percentage of that value. Now, exactly how much you draw down depends on how your company does it. There are a bunch of different rules for that you can use according to GAAP principles, the generally accepted accounting principles. Meanwhile, operating expenditures historically have been for daily expenses. I need to buy some pens. I need to buy some paper. I need to.
It's not a profit.
So yeah, I got to buy lunch for a sales contact. These are your day-to-day expenses. You cannot amortize them. You cannot depreciate them. It all comes in the same tax year. Generally, capex, you have to go to the board. You have to get fiscal approval. You need to go through entire processes. Opex, you push a button and bam. As long as you have budget for it, as long as you are authorized, you get to spend. Now, where it gets interesting is that last line, EBITDA. EBITDA, earnings before interest, depreciation, taxation, and amortization.
That's right.
This is, let's put it this way. You know how a lot of startups aren't profitable?
I feel like you're going to say something illegal. I'm going to go down here. Hold on. Christensen is not involved in this podcast.
Right. Another shop talk first. Mike has exited the podcast. So a lot of startups, a lot of younger companies are not profitable. And what they do, instead of showing profit, because that's all negative, what they do is they say, well, if you take out money that we're paying for interest payments, money that we're paying on depreciating assets, money that we're paying on taxes, money that we're paying on amortization, if you take all that stuff out, look at how much more money we have. It was like, yes, that is actually the definition of profit, where if you start taking things out of your costs, suddenly it looks better. So they have this measure of EBITDA that somehow has taken over markets as a reasonable measure. I find it to be dumb. However, a lot of people find it to be interesting. And in fact, when companies go IPO, usually they reference EBITDA instead of profit. So going back, like actual example, since I no longer work at the company, back when Channel Advisor had gone public, which was about 10 years ago, they focused on EBITDA over profits because for about 5 or 6 years, they were not profitable. They, however, had decent EBITDA. But where things get real exciting is if you have a capital expenditure, it has no impact on your EBITDA because you depreciate or amortize that capital expenditure in its whole. So if you spend $10 million buying a whole bunch of A100 GPUs, you get to take that $10 million out from EBITDA. However, if you Opex and pay $10 million worth of GPU compute time on AWS or Azure, that shows up in EBITDA as a loss of $10 million. So you actually have a loss in terms of how you look in the market from using operating expenditures instead of capital expenditures. But where things get really interesting, Anders mentioned it, and I wanted to see if I had a slide specifically on it, but no. Anders did mention there have been changes to GAAP in terms of how you can write off cloud stuff. Previously, by previously I mean before about 2015 to 2018. That's when some of these rules first started changing. You could not write off anything that was in AWS or Azure. Everything there was operating expenditure. You could not capitalize anything.
Oh, I'm sure they lobbied against that.
Well, it's not so much lobbying because it's not a governmental thing. It is, I guess it is lobbying within the organization. So these are organizations of accountants who come up with what are the principles that we can all agree on won't get any of us thrown in jail. So governments are involved, but they're not the ones making the decisions on what is acceptable accounting practice. But they have made changes over time so that certain things you can depreciate or amortize. For example, if you have reserved instances, the cost of licensing, as long as you have a multi-year reservation, so if you have a 3-year reservation, the cost of licensing SQL Server or Windows Server or whatever else you're licensing, Oracle or whatever, you can depreciate that. You can amortize that. You cannot amortize the compute. So the compute is still an operating expenditure, but the licensing portion of it is a capitalizable asset. And they've got a few other things like that where it has to cross multiple tax years, which makes it a challenge for things that are not reserved instances. But there are some items that you are able to capitalize now. So that was my long story on capitalization.
Hey, that's a huge deal. We should do a follow-up on that if we have like Bob Ward or other people that know more about it. Like, that's a big deal, Kevin.
Yeah. If you find the right person who actually knows, I would say it's not so much the database person, it's the accounting person at a company that uses a lot of cloud technologies. Those people would know some of these rules more intimately.
And all right, well, that could be a due diligence item for me because I did a lot of accounting. I don't have a degree in accounting, so I got a music degree, and then I went back to school at NC State, took all the accounting courses, and they were like, "Hey, you gotta like take English," and I'm like, I already have a bachelor's degree," and they're like, "Too bad."
Yeah, let me clarify for Enhanced QC. Yes, you can write off operating expenditures in this tax year. What you cannot do is stretch it out over multiple tax years. So for the purposes of your taxes, yeah, you could say I spent $10 million on cloud this year. However, you can't smooth future years using a purchase from this year. So if you have very chunky cloud utilization, it is going to chum up the waters, so to speak. That's a technical accounting term, chumming up the waters. But it'll increase that volatility in what the quarterly tax bill is for the company. But yes, you can in fact write those off. Like for example, my independent, my solo company, I basically do everything as cash accounting and don't really depreciate or amortize, mostly because I'm lazy.
I think a lot of us would disagree with you being lazy, but that's a side point.
All right. And getting rid of the income tax and taxing all lawyers and accountants.
Okay, that's a dream. Is this Anders again?
No, actually, it was not Anders, but that's okay. I won't directly respond. I will note that it exists. I will note that it is an opinion. I won't give my opinion, whether it's counter or pro, but I will instead say, what are your future plans regarding cloud adoption? And the plurality of people say a hybrid approach, meaning that, yeah, some cloud, some not cloud, some some full migration to cloud, no migration plans. Interesting, there is no demigrate. There is no get away from the cloud as one of the options.
That was one of my questions. How do you do that?
How do you decloudify? Is that your question?
Well, sorry, I'm double making the same question. Like, well, what do people talk about when you have to do that? And clearly it's not being brought up.
Yeah, there's I agree, and there are steps to it. It's not something that you can just choose to do because, yeah, you do need to repurchase equipment if you got rid of it. You do need to find the data center or decide if you're going to host co-located. And in a lot of cases, I think what people call private cloud, like it's a data center. You're just using a data center. It's granted, it's a data center and I'm renting their hardware. Okay. Yeah, you can call that private cloud as, I guess, technically, but it's at that point, my server downstairs is a cloud because I'm accessing it remotely. I'm upstairs. So if you build your apps cloud native, I don't think you can take them back off on premises. You would have to do a lot of work. It depends. So it depends on what kinds of APIs and interfaces you're using. Like, for example, Azure Event Hubs has effectively duplicated API with Apache Kafka, meaning that if you're writing to an event hub, if you write your code well enough, you can pretty easily swap out to Kafka, because actually they do it the opposite way. They intend you to start with Kafka and try to steal some of that Kafka market share and say, hey, with event hubs, you can just reference it the same way. You can use the same commands. With on-premises work, I know that there are emulators for S3. So you could have an S3 API that is actually pointing to your local storage. I know that Pure Storage has associations with that as well, which means that in some of these cases, yeah, you could, especially if your cloud native applications are also heavily running, say, Kubernetes, or you've containerized much of this work. Well, in that case, why does it matter where the cloud is? If that cloud is inside your company or if it's in Azure. So that's the general idea. Hamish. There's Hamish right here. New Zealand's best export. All right. Average time for database changes to be deployed to production. For finance specific, what? This chart, no. I hate this chart. It hurts me because this should not be a stacked column chart. This should be separate. You should have two lines, one for finance, one for everybody, because it's not. It doesn't add up to 39%. It's 21% and then 18%. Yeah, I am actually having a bit of a meltdown. And what's funny is the article that we're not going to have time to talk about is from Martin Scooby, and it's called Rate My Dashboard. And I will definitely talk about it next episode of Shop Talk. I've been holding off. I wanted to talk about it last episode. We had plenty to talk about. I wanted to talk about it on this episode. Obviously, we've had plenty to talk about. So next time, you know what? Financial services is just going to make me angry. Let's end on data platforms. Okay, number of data platforms. We kind of saw this chart already. Holy moly. Okay, these are numbers. These add up. These are additive, so that's okay. Data platforms currently used with number of instances. 1 instance, 2 to 5 instances, 5 to 10. So you will notice that the majority of respondents are using SQL Server. About, what is that, 2/3 to almost 3/4 of their respondents are SQL Server customers, followed by MySQL, Postgres, Oracle, Access. My word. A third of the companies are still using Access. Redis, makes sense. Elasticsearch. DB2. That's a name I haven't heard in a while. How long have you
DB2
been...
is like IBM, like that's right?
Yeah, IBM DB2. Fox Pro. I made my Fox Pro joke earlier. How long?
I actually Googled it because I had never heard of it.
Oh, yeah. IBM. So DB2 has been around for decades. That was one of the early relational database platforms. You go back to the mid 80s. Okay, so the book that I have.
DB2 is very old. Very old.
This is like the IBM COD days. Like he was 70.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking like late 70s, maybe early 80s, definitely. By the mid 80s, oh, absolutely.
I knew there was an arms race at the time because I read a book about it and about how he came up with relational algebra, and it was really, quite honestly, it was really interesting. Like,
yeah, you know what?
That's a whole other shop talk.
Vamp for 20 seconds, and I'll give us a visual to close us out.
Yeah, I agree with that because we're hey, Mala, you and I. First of all, your hat is amazing. Is there any significance with the yellow?
That looks like a no.
Mala was frozen, I think.
You're referring to my hat?
Yeah. So I'm referring to the fact that last time, like a couple of weeks ago, Kevin was like, "You guys need to vamp a little bit once in a while," and you and I were like, "Ooh, our bad." So I was vamping and also appreciating your hat.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, thank you.
It's beautiful. Is there any significance to the yellow? Or it's just pretty? Like you just like the.
It's just pretty.
It's just pretty that you like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I got what will close us out, and I just need to make sure that this was actually a little bit later than I expected.
Kevin is right. That chart is just horrible. Totally
it's not a good chart. No. So every time I ran into DB2 attached to legacy BI systems that take so many millions of dollars to replace, so they just get virtualized. They'll probably outlive us. Pretty much, yeah.
I don't know how much time I left.
Yeah, and mainframes. That's the other place. So we're closing out. Handbook of Relational Database Design. Excellent book, by the way. If you ever want a really good book on database normalization, this is from 1989. It is Fleming and von Halle. And their examples, Teradata, DBC 1012, DB2, and I think they have Oracle in here as well. But this came from a library. I bought it online. But the other books in the book cover here, A Guide to DB2, A Guide to Ingress, A Guide to the SQL Standard by date, 1987. Looking in here, yeah, these were, this is what was popular at the time. So also, Howard Baker checked out this book in November 9th of 1989. So good on Howard Baker.
Get a promotion.
Yeah, hey, if Howard, if you're still around, if you're watching Shop Talk, good on you. You made a good choice in checking out this exact book that I now own. But Oracle,
I have. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, please.
I was going to say, I have some of those books, and I think that, interestingly, like, I have this advanced Oracle book that has, like, info path by _ It has things that are not universal, but, like, there is no book that someone in the community, Oracle, SQL Server, Postgres, like Mala, Kevin, that hasn't put their heart and soul in. Right. So I think that like there's a lot of great books out there that have techniques that you can really benefit from. So that's my speech.
Fair enough. And the one reference to Oracle in this book, is, for example, Oracle is advertised as one of the earliest implementations of a distributed DBMS product, enabling close cooperation among different SQL-based relational DBMSs, such as IBM's DB2 and Oracle's Oracle.
Oracle's Oracle.
Oracle was in all caps, versus Oracle, the company, that was just the letter A was capitalized.
Oracle's Oracle has got to go down in like stand-up comedy history.
And I think a lot of airline reservation systems run DB2 on mainframes, except for Southwest, which is using a Commodore 64, as we learned from their X account. All right. But hey, no CrowdStrike problems for them. With that joke, it's just a joke. We're going to end Shop Talk for tonight. We are actually 5 minutes over, which means over the next 12 episodes, I am going to shave about 28 seconds off at the end, and then we'll even out. But I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I appreciate the fun chat. We enjoyed, for the most part, many of these graphs. See, why couldn't you just do this? This is a better graph. Yes, I know there's a lot of bars.
Yes, that is a good graph. Yes.
It's clearer. It's kind of clear.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, let's wrap up. Everyone, have a wonderful evening. Remember, tomorrow we have Jess Chapman, who is talking about securing Azure SQL using Azure RBAC, Entra ID, and SQL authentication. So Jess Chapman's doing that tomorrow. Next Tuesday, we have Serbi Pakarna, who is going to talk to us about principles of architecting a cloud data migration. And then fourth Tuesday, be on the lookout for that. We're still getting the exact title and abstract in. We know who the speaker should be, but we just have to get those details sorted out. You can find all of these up on meetup.com/tripass. And until we see each other in a future user group meeting, episode of Shop Talk, or if I'm like tailgating you on the road, everyone, take care.